And if you have questions you'd like answered, please email us at askus@kcbsradio.com. Dr. Schwartzberg, thanks as always for joining us to discuss this. There's been press about the XBB variant that paints it as somehow more insidious, more dangerous than the others. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, certainly if you're living in Singapore right now, you're experiencing this particular variant in terms of causing considerable disease there. It's causing a real spike there, and in some other countries in that region. This is just another one of these sub-variants of Omicron that is finding its way to be able to evade the immunity we have either from previous infection or vaccines. It doesn't completely evade the immunity, but it is more successful than, for example, what we've been dealing with over the summer, BA.5. So XBB is certainly one we're watching very carefully.
But what we have now are these bivalent vaccine boosters. Do we think these will make a difference against BQ1 or XBB?
We think that they certainly will make a difference. This new bivalent vaccine is going to give us broader, more robust immunity against both the ancestral strain, which the previous vaccines did, also BA.5, but we think it's going to give us even broader immunity than that. There's no guarantee, but all of the data to date, which is not a lot, is pointing towards the efficacy of this vaccine. So I really would urge people to go out and get it.
When do you think we'll have more data about the efficacy of the bivalent vaccines?
I think we'll see, right now we're actually seeing laboratory data showing good antibody responses to a variety of different variants, including, of course, BA.5. What we really want to see is the clinical data. That is, how well is this new vaccine protecting us against getting infected, getting sick, getting really sick and winding up in the hospital or dying. That data probably will be coming out, I would guess at the earliest towards the end of November, but that's just a guess.
So we thought up to this point the ultimate protection was to have had your booster and to have immunity left from having conquered the disease itself. Does XBB or some of the other new variants point to maybe that's not quite what we thought it was?
I don't think we can reach that conclusion. I think you're absolutely correct that the best immunity that people can get is A, being up to date with their vaccination, and B, previously having infection. Now, I'm certainly not suggesting that we go out and get infected to have optimal immunity, but that appears to be the most robust protection we can get. Against these new variants, we just don't have the clinical data to tell us, but there's nothing really to suggest that that immunity is not going to be very good for anything that this virus throws at us.
And meanwhile, many of the mandates that we have seen over the past 2.5 years or so have been lifted. People are behaving a little bit more like we used to behave in 2019. That combined with these new subvariants, do we think this is what we could call a new phase of the pandemic?
I think so. Anybody who tries to predict what this virus is going to be doing is going to probably be wrong. We've been wrong consistently as we've gone along. I think we're very good at predicting what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks and pretty good about what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks. But beyond that, our ability to predict this virus is very, 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 very poor. All of that said, there are some signs that are very disturbing in terms of what's going to happen in the late fall and winter. And we're watching these things very carefully. For example, in Germany, France, the UK, other parts of the European Union, we're seeing an uptick in cases. That's disturbing. In the northeast of the United States, we're seeing wastewater data showing an uptick in the amount of virus in wastewater. And that often presages what we're going to be seeing a couple weeks after that. When we look at hospitalizations, for example, in New York State, they're going up right now, and that's very concerning. And typically we see the Northeast as sort of the harbinger of what's to come for the rest of the United States. So those are some warning signs. And if you add that to how people are really living right now, which is really the vast majority of people are living as if there's no pandemic, I think that potentially could set us up for some hard times in late fall, early winter.
You are listening to Ask an Expert, and our guest today is Dr. John Swartzberg, Infectious Disease Professor Emeritus at the UC Berkeley School of Public Health. If you've got a question for the doctor, just email us at askus@kcbsradio.com. Doctor, hang on for just 1 second. At 9:28, we need to get caught up on this KCBS traffic because it's been a really busy morning, and Kim Wonderly is in your local Honda dealer's traffic center.
All right, and we're still stuck with a couple of problems. Northbound 680 has been the closure of Sunol, North 680 at the 84 split with that big rig crash. They're hoping to have a couple lanes open, but they were hoping to have that by 9 o'clock, and here we are at 9:30. So the backup is going to take you about an hour to get through. It's basically a parking lot from Vargas, northbound 680, and then westbound 92 coming off the San Mateo Bridge through Foster City. This has been that long-standing stalled rig on the ramp to North 101. It's blocking the right lane. That's why that traffic's hung up. But overall, everything else is really thinned out quite nicely, like the Silicon Valley, Bay Bridge, hardly any weight left at the toll plaza, just a little bit of sluggish traffic on the bridge. Your next update is at 9:38 on the traffic leader, KCBS.
Partly to mostly sunny skies expected today, cooler than yesterday with highs in the 60s to low 80s, but we really cooled down over the weekend, and there's a possibility of a few raindrops tomorrow. Traffic and weather together on the 8th on All News 106.9 and AM 740 KCBS. KCBS News Time 9:29.
We are talking with our expert this morning, Dr. John Swartzberg, the latest on COVID concerns out there, and we're going to take some listener questions for you right now, Doc. Here's one that's kind of interesting. Is public health concern about new variants focused right now on how bad or severe the infections are, or is it more focused on how transmissible the variant is?
What an important question. All of the data right now suggests it's the latter. That is, we're more concerned about how transmissible these new variants will be. There's nothing we've seen to date that suggests these new variants make us sicker than any of the other variants of Omicron. So that's good news.
This listener has an understanding that infection rates on the East Coast are very high, maybe into the 20%. What does that mean for us on the West Coast? And this person's wondering if any, COVID restrictions might be reenacted.
Yeah, well, as I was mentioning earlier, we are concerned with what we're starting to see in the Northeast. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been seeing the numbers go up, particularly in New York State with hospitalizations and the wastewater data showing more virus. And both of those things suggest a problem that it's going to be even more significant as the weeks go on. And typically, although it's hard to say typical about anything with this virus, but typically we've seen the Northeast be the first focus in the United States before it spreads out to the rest of the U.S. So we'll see what happens with that. But it is disconcerting to see the numbers starting to go up in the Northeast.
Here's another incisive listener question. Does it make more sense from a public health standpoint to be consistent in our strategy and approach to handling this, or to make adjustments every time a new variant pops up in another part of the world?
Well, it's fine to be consistent if what you're being consistent about is soundly based in science. And the problem that we've had throughout the pandemic is that we've made decisions, but we haven't really informed the public about how good the science is to support those decisions. So I think our communication has really been problematic. I think that the public needs to understand that there's a steep learning curve with COVID. We've only been dealing with it for just a touch less than 3 years now. And as we learn more, we're going to change our minds about what is important. We can see that with stories about the masking, about vaccines, and so on. So scientists are very familiar with and comfortable with the idea that as we learn something new, we have to change what we're doing. But the public that's not how the public really lives, and that's not what they're very familiar with. And so I think the public understandably feels very whipsawed as we change what we're advising. My feeling is that if we learn something that suggests that what we're doing is not the best thing, we ought to change.
This listener wants to know if we'll ever reach a point when we can develop a vaccine that targets each new variant that comes along, like we've done with the bivalent vaccine for Omicron, or such as we do for the flu shot.
Right. Well, that is the holy grail. What we want to find is a vaccine that is going to cover not only all of the previous and current variants of COVID, of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID. We want to find a vaccine that will